pain and illness to miracles, psychic gifts, alien encounters, spiritual growth and more. Tune in now because it's podcast time. It's podcast time.
Disclaimer. The information on this podcast is not intended or implied to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. All content is the personal opinion of the host, including text, graphics, images, and content contained in or available through this podcast is for general information purposes. The channel makes no representation and assumes no responsibility for the accuracy of the information on or available through the podcast or channel, as such information is subject to change without notice, though due diligence has been made to make sure it's accurate at the time of posting. You are encouraged to confirm any information obtained through this podcast with the listed references and other sources, and I strongly encourage you to discuss any information regarding a medical condition and or treatment of a medical condition with your physician.
Welcome to the Path of a Healer podcast. I'm Sheri. I'm a nurse, an energy worker, a spiritual explorer, and much more, who has walked through trauma, transformation, and awakening. On this journey, I'll share my personal story, healing experiences, and the wisdom that I have gathered along the way. Together, we'll dive into the mysteries of energy, spirit, and the human heart, discovering how healing ourselves can ripple out to heal the world. Thank you for walking this path with me. Let's begin. Hello. Today I'd like to give you a cautionary tale. Even though I've been doing energy work for over 20 years and I've been trained through Healing Touch and Reiki, this is something that I had never come across and never even heard of. I came across a situation where I ended up having a Djinn cause havoc in my life. And so anyone who does energy work, this is a cautionary tale for you. The situation was that I was sitting at a desk and a couple came by and they went into a room, and then they came out a little bit later and they asked one of my friends if I was psychic. And my friend, of course, said, yeah, she is. And they asked if I wouldn't mind coming and talking to them. So I went over and I introduced myself. And as I approached, the husband looked at me and said, "What are you?" And I thought that was kind of an interesting question. And I'm like, well, I'm a lot of things. What do you mean? And he said, well, I know you're a healer. I can see that. But what are you? And I told him a little bit about myself. And then I noticed he was holding his arm, and I asked if he was in pain, and he said yes. And I said, well, would you like me to help relieve your pain? And he was like, yes, please. And so I started doing a technique called the pain drain. And I had gone through a couple of rounds of the pain drain where I'm taking the energy out, and then I'm putting good energy in, and then taking out, putting in. And as I'm working on him, they are talking about some of the books that they know. They're talking about their psychic abilities. The wife looks at me and says, you astral travel, don't you? And I say, yeah, I guess so. I've been told that before anyway. And so we continued talking, and pretty soon the wife asked me if I could read her aura. And I said, well, I don't usually see auras, but sure, I'll try. And I looked, and the room was kind of dark, and I was able to see this green glow just slightly above her crown, just right here, but this huge column of black that went all the way from the ceiling to her head. And I looked at her and I said, but you've got an attachment. And then I went, and there's something that right there next to you, because I saw something dark move around behind her. And she said, oh yeah, that's my Djinn. And I was like, Okay, and at this point I had stopped doing a pain drain on the husband, and he proceeded to tell me that he had done a blood sacrifice to attach two Djinn to him as protectors, and then they had had a baby and attached to her so that she could be protected because she had something going on with her from birth where she got attachments quite a bit, and usually negative entities. And so, and they said the names of their Djinn. And I'm kind of backing out of the room at this point and going, okay, I don't know that that's something I would want to deal with, but I hope you know what you're doing. And I wish them well. And the man actually looked at me and said, "You have the biggest aura I have ever seen." And I was like, "Oh, well, thank you." And I proceeded to leave, and I didn't think too much more about it. But by the time I left the area, my right hand at the wrist was hurting really bad. And I thought, well, maybe I'd lifted somebody wrong or done something. And I went to get in the car to shift my car into drive, and I actually couldn't. It hurt that much. And I had to reach over with my other arm and shift my car. And I drove home, and I went to bed, and I got up the next day, and I took my normal salt bath that I do every day before I go to work as a cleansing so that I can get rid of anything that may have attached to me if I was doing any energy work. And I got up, and my wrist still hurt, and I took my salt bath like I said, and when I went to get out of the tub, it was still hurting so bad I almost couldn't get myself out of the bathtub. But I managed to get out, and I went to work, and I put some heat packs on it, and within a half an hour the pain was gone, and I didn't think too much more about it. But then I got an email a few days later from the couple saying that the taxi that they had taken home from the event had been T-boned. And then the wife had been in another car accident and hurt her back the next day. And so I was like, oh, okay, well, maybe I had disrupted something. But, I didn't think I had that kind of power to affect an entity that somebody wanted attached to them. And so I didn't really put too much thought into it. But I was talking to a friend a couple days later, and I was telling her the story, and she came up with the same thing of, oh my gosh, either it was really attracted to your energy or it got mad because you saw it or something and ended up messing with you. And I was like, oh, okay. And again, I have seals on my house, so I wasn't terribly worried about it. But I noticed some things happening over the next 2 weeks that were very strange. And in hindsight, looking at each of those things, they could show that this Djinn had come home with me, but because the doors were sealed, it got trapped in my house. And so the things that I was seeing were, we used to get 4 or 5 flies a day in the house if we left the back door open, but now all of a sudden we had 50, 60 flies in the kitchen. And I had bought a bag of lemons, and it was rotted on the counter the next day. My daughter had stayed overnight, and when she drove up to Seattle on the way back, her engine died. My brother had stayed the night, and his back started hurting. My husband's back got injured during this time. And I went to go do laundry, and I went to pull the laundry out of the washer, and it was soaking wet because the washer wasn't draining. So all of these things were going wrong. I cleaned house, and I found a bunch of winning scratch-offs. But when I took them in, they were outdated, even though I know I bought them less than 2 months ago. And so the $50, $60 of cash there, I didn't get because they were no longer good. And then the thing that really triggered me into realizing that this Djinn was interrupting my life was my ex-podcast host had sent me a text saying that she just didn't have the energy to do the podcast anymore. but somehow I completely misread it and persevered on it for a couple of weeks, and then ended up sending her a message saying that that really hurt, and it was completely misread on her end, and she sent me a very, very harsh response and then just ghosted me. And as I'm starting to realize that this has to do with this Djinn, I reach out to her spouse, who is an expert in the paranormal, and asked for assistance, but he also shut me down, saying that he was going to honor his wife's wishes and not reach out and help me. And that's when I knew I was having this cognitive disorientation, and that was the last sign that told me that I was dealing with the Djinn. And now I had to do some studying to figure out how I was going to get it out of my house. And so that's what I did. And I'll let you know how I did that. Okay, let's take a little break. I really hope you're enjoying this episode of the Path of a Healer podcast. And if so, share a little love by hitting that subscribe, like, and share the video. Also, hit that little bell icon so that you're notified every time I drop a new episode. Your support means so much to me. It allows me to reach more people who are ready to awaken. So thank you. And back to the program. So first off, I guess I should tell you what is a Djinn. Djinn is an ancient being, often described in the Middle Eastern traditions. They exist in a realm parallel to ours, and like humans, they can be benevolent, they can be neutral, or they can be malevolent. And unlike spirits of the dead, they were never human. They have free will of their own, and they can form attachments to people, either voluntarily or through rituals. And this man had done a blood ritual in order to attach them. And sometimes they attach simply because they see an opening, which is what happened with me. When I did the energy work, I opened up my energy field and let them attach. Many cultures warn against attempting to bind or control a Djinn because their nature is unpredictable, and their sense of morality doesn't align with human morality or ethics. They're tricksters, they're teachers, and sometimes they're tormentors, which was my experience. And some of the signs of a Djinn attachment is a sudden increase in pests like flies and ants, insects, and in unnatural numbers, rapid spoilage of food or water without any explanation, strings of bad luck or accidents all clustered too close together for them to be accidents, unexplained physical pain or weakness. Oh yeah, I was also trying to help my husband move the couch, and I could not. I couldn't lift it, I couldn't push it, and that is not me. I am a person who can lift 400-pound patients. Moving from person to person, mechanical or electrical failures piling up one after another, distorted thinking or misperceptions like misreading messages, hearing words that weren't spoken, and relationship disruptions that are caused by miscommunication or unusual hostility. Energy drain, constant fatigue, and yes, I was so tired during this whole period. Irritability or feeling like you're being watched. And when several of these happen together in a short period, it's a real red flag that something deeper might be going on or influencing your environment. And so then the challenge is, how do you get rid of a Djinn once it has attached to you or your place of residence? And when it came time that I realized what it was and I did my research, it didn't want to leave without a fight. I did come up with a ritual, and as I began the ritual, my voice got so hoarse I could hardly talk. And I found myself forcing it out, and even today my voice is still hoarse from doing this. By the time I got to the fourth room, the censer that I had the frankincense and myrrh in, the cord just snapped on it and almost dropped hot coals on the carpet. When I went to the next room, the candle just blew out on its own. And I finally got to the last doorway where I was gonna push it out. And as I said the incantation to get it to leave out, it literally slammed, like it felt like a hand slammed in the back of my shoulder blades, and it actually pushed me slightly forward. And another interesting thing that was going on during this is my Russian blue tortoiseshell cat was following me from room to room to room, like she was helping me clear it. And they are known as protectors and spirit guides, and so I do believe she was helping to chase it out. And once it slammed into my back and went out the door, the cat ran after it, and then the cat ran right back in. I shut the door and I put the seal back on it so that it couldn't come back in. And right about the time that I did that, my husband's and my brother's back pain went away, even though they weren't here. They correlated what time it went away with what time I finished that ritual. The flies went away, the fruit stopped rotting, the washing machine started draining, the heaviness in the house lifted, the air felt lighter, and the space was clearer and peaceful. And yeah, it was definitely a fight to get it out of here. So what I learned from this is that not every call for help is meant for us as energy workers to answer. That we need to be making sure that people haven't attached things to themselves purposefully. And we also need to make sure that we are grounding, that we are making sure that we're not absorbing other people's energy, and that it's not always our role to intervene. And the Djinn reminded me that curiosity can be costly, and that spiritual protection is not something to take for granted. Cleansing, make sure you're doing a daily cleansing. I personally like a salt bath. This time I put holy oil from Jerusalem in it, as well as sea salt and vinegar, and I lit a white candle and I told it wasn't welcome in my energy field. And as far as getting it out of my house, I will put up the ritual that I did to get it out of my house on my website for you to watch. But above all, I learned boundaries aren't just saying no to people. They're about saying no to energies as well, and that do not serve our highest good. And if you'd like, you can read more about this whole situation on my webpage so that you can learn how to cleanse your environment of negative entities and your person as well. You can find that at www.thepathofahealer.com. Hope you have a wonderful day. Hey, thank you so much for tuning into the Path of a Healer podcast. Share a little love by hitting that subscribe, like, and share the video. Also, hit that little bell icon so that you're notified every time I drop a new episode. I am so grateful to share this journey with you. Until next time, remember, you were never alone, and let's keep working together to raise our vibrations. See you soon.